The best lawyers aren't found in the big law firms. They're found in the stories of those who left. Chapter 12. Ending Imposter Syndrome for Good. New work kept coming, clients returned, and school pickups were never missed. Plus, we had a few date nights to celebrate a successful 6 months in business. We even managed a long weekend away as a family. It was the first time I wasn't working the whole time, just trying to stay on top of the emails Mitchum used to fire off like heat-seeking missiles, even when I was on leave. Things were looking up, but there was a part of me that felt like there was still some unfinished business with my former boss. Some part of me that hoped I'd get the chance to go up against Mitchum, to go head-to-head with him in a negotiation and really know that I was ready, that I could win. Even now, that phrase he used, "you're not ready," still surfaced during moments of self-doubt. The man who threatened to bury me in lawsuits the second I left. The man who had spent years treating me like just another cog in his machine. The man who was so convinced of his own power that he never considered the possibility that someone might beat him. And now we were sitting across from each other at a mediation table, except this time I wasn't his associate. This time I was the one leading the charge. And this time I wasn't just fighting for my client, I was fighting for me too. My client, Jackson DeChamp, ran a construction business. He was an honest operator who had landed a major project and was being cornered by Mitchum's firm. They were representing a massive wholesaler and had drafted a supply agreement that they were now attempting to use to force Jackson into liquidation by demanding inflated prices for materials after he'd won the tender, relying on extremely one-sided clauses to attempt to do so. Normally I stuck to the front-end contract work, but this was a chance to help someone on the back end. A chance to prevent a good man from being intimidated into shutting down his business by the very same bully who had made himself feel big by making me feel small. The contract was stacked against Jackson. Clauses riddled with hidden penalties, price hikes without warning, designed to bleed his company dry on a project that already had razor-thin margins. By the time he realised, it was almost too late. His final move begged Mitchum's firm to negotiate. Their response: "You signed it, we're simply enforcing the terms of the agreement." No conversation, no compromise. Just a cold wall of legalese in response to his repeated emails offering payment plans, alternatives, and genuine attempts to keep his 30 employees in work so the project would finish on time for everyone. That's when he found me. Well, actually, he was referred to me by Elon, who told him, "Jason's got a lot of reasons to fight twice as hard against his old firm if you give him the chance." I spent a full day thinking through if there was any chance I would be in conflict and have had anything to do with the wholesaler client, but I never sat in a meeting or was even CC'd on a single email with this particular client of Mitchum's. No access, no connection. I was in the clear and I was ready, or at least I told myself that. Truthfully, I hadn't dared speak it out loud to anyone, but part of me still wondered if I was ready. Mitchum's words, "you're not ready," still echoed loudly when the imposter syndrome doubts crept in. But this was a chance to silence them for good. A chance to prove I could play with the big boys. The chance to prove I could take on the big firms on their turf with all their resources being used and win. Not by being louder, not by being flashier, but simply being better. The good news was that I knew exactly how Mitchum operated. The arrogance, the intimidation, the habit of walking into negotiations underprepared, relying purely on his presence to bully the other side into submission. I wasn't going to let that happen. The bad news? He had an army of junior lawyers at his disposal. But I knew the truth. The best lawyers had left not long after me. What he had now were law clerks, leftover paralegals, and a handful of lawyers. The ones too green or too average to find work elsewhere and were working for him out of necessity for both them and the firm who couldn't attract good talent anymore. I invested days preparing for this mediation. I broke every clause down into plain English so Jackson understood exactly how he had been set up. I found precedents where similar contracts had been ruled unconscionable and unfair, especially under the newly enforceable legislation. I drafted a revised agreement that was fair, something we could propose as a counter-offer to continue the relationship, provided it include full repayment of overpayments plus interest and legal costs. But most importantly, I mapped out Mitchum's every likely move, how he'd posture, where he'd point the blame, and how I could counter-strike. This time I wasn't prepping at midnight while juggling 50 other matters. This time there was no scramble, no pressure to make Mitchum look good in front of the clients. This time the success couldn't be stolen by him. For the first time in my career, I had time to think, time to strategize, time to make sure we walked in fully armed, while Mitchum, like always, assumed his name alone was enough to win. He had no idea what was coming. We sat in the conference room at the mediation centre, the walls lined with outdated legal text no one had touched in decades. Mitchum was across the table, arms folded. Flanked to his left were two junior associates who were frantically flipping through binders, trying to ensure they were prepared. To Mitchum's right was the CEO of the supplier company, who appeared more interested in his phone than the meeting about to take place. I had one person beside me, Jackson. The mediator cleared their throat. Shall we begin? Mitchum leaned back, wearing that same taunting smug I'd seen for years. There's no need to drag this out. Your client signed the agreement. The clause is clear. My client can adjust prices at their sole discretion to ensure profitability. There's nothing to discuss. It's just business. It's not personal. I let the smallest breath slip free, the thrill of certainty rooting me deeper in my seat, because he'd walked straight into the trap. I reached into my folder and slid a stack of documents across the table. I knew that whilst I'd sent it all to him over a week ago, this was likely his first time holding them. Actually, pausing to soak it in, we have quite a bit to discuss. Mitchum's gaze flicked down to the document, and I watched his smirk falter. Because it wasn't just a demand letter, and it sure as hell wasn't a simple offer for settlement. It was a full breakdown of every single clause in his contract, including every hidden landmine, now legally invalid under legislation introduced the year before. 1 month after the unfair contract provisions came into effect, this contract had been signed by my client. The hidden penalties, the one-sided termination clause, the automatic price increases with zero renegotiation period. I'd highlighted every single flaw, and next to them, case law, precedent, proof that it wouldn't hold up if we went in front of a judge. The room went still. Jackson, to his credit, didn't say a word. He just sat there, arms folded, smiling like a schoolboy as we watched Mitchum's confidence crack. The mediator cleared their throat again. Mr. Hayes, do you have a response? Mitchum flipped through the pages, his jaw tight. I let the silence stretch. I wasn't going to fill it for him. I wasn't going to rescue him. Not this time, not like I had for years. I had all the time in the world. Finally, he spoke. He caught himself, feigning confidence. This is a creative interpretation of new laws that are as yet untested by the courts. I tilted my head, calm and speaking as though it surprised me as much as him. And yet, every case I cited has been upheld, and every clause you enforced fits the exact framework of what is called unfair by the legislation. More silence. I folded my hands and did my best to not act like I had just beaten the schoolyard bully and wanted to rub it in his face. We are open to a revised agreement, one that is mutually beneficial and honours the original prices agreed upon. But if your client refuses, we'll proceed with a formal application requesting the regulator to investigate the unfair contract terms, because I'm guessing Jackson isn't the only one being treated this way by your client. Mitchum's lips thinned because he knew exactly what that meant. If we filed, not only would his client lose, but Mitchum's firm would take a reputational hit for drafting the contract in the first place, and the client would almost certainly be looking for new representation. He turned to his client, a balding man in a navy suit who had gone alarmingly pale, like a man watching his safety net unravel in real time. This was not how these meetings usually go for men like him. The two whispered, their discussion growing more and more frantic. Finally, Mitchum exhaled sharply. Fine. We'll use the originally quoted prices. I smiled. Jackson leaned forward. He couldn't help himself. And you'll pay my legal costs? Mitchum's head slowly fell forward, the acceptance of his defeat settling in. And my firm will cover the legal costs. The client beside Mitchum looked ropeable, but nodded in acceptance. The mediator noted the agreement. Resolved. Just like that. It was over quicker than I could have scripted. As we packed up, I felt Mitchum's glare burning across the room. Trying to be threatening, he threw out his final attempt to get one over on me. Careful, Carter, you're making enemies in this industry. Without blinking, I let the words land like a quiet warning. No, Mitchum, I'm making a reputation. His jaw flexed in contempt. I turned back to Jackson and extended my hand. Congratulations, let's get the new contract drafted. He shook it, grinning. Hell of a show, Jason. We left the room without another word. As I was about to enter the lift, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I spun my head to see Mitchum's client standing there. Great job today, and I'd like to apologise to you, Jackson. This is not the kind of company I want to run, and we'll be looking for a new firm to represent us in the future. Jackson responded before I could, well, this guy's taken, but I think you're making the right call. As the lift doors started to close, I kept my reply simple. Thanks. I could see Mitchum standing only a few feet away, head low in shame. This man I had once thought was the pinnacle of the industry now looked like the weak man Courtney had always told me he was. After shaking hands with Jackson outside the building, I slid into an Uber to head home, pulled out my phone and texted Courtney just 2 simple words. We won. She knew what that meant. She knew what this entire case meant, and had even let me off the hook for a couple of missed bedtime routines so I could be completely prepared and confident today. This was the kind of moment that made careers. My phone buzzed, a message from Courtney, a gify of Michael Scott from The Office saying, "Oh, how the turntables." I snorted, unable to contain myself, drawing a strange look from the driver. 30 minutes later, I walked through the door to find Courtney pouring 2 gin and tonics. Half question, half statement, Courtney's words were short and sweet. That must have felt kind of nice. I couldn't control my volume. Wahoo! Throwing my hands in the air and startling her into stepping back and raising the glasses in defence. Adrenaline surged through me, but more euphoric than the victory itself was getting to share the win with her. Courtney set the drinks on the counter, jumped up and wrapped her legs around me and gave me a deep kiss. As I placed her back down, she grabbed my glass, placed it in my hand and then raised her own. Raising her glass high, the spark in her eyes matching the fire in her voice, to turning the table on tyrants. I clinked my glass against hers. Before drinking, I tipped my glass towards hers in mock seriousness. To starting our own Michael Scott paper company, I said. The ice clinked, and it truly felt like all the imposter syndrome, all the nagging doubts, and all the anxiety that had haunted me since I quit all those months ago were behind me. Mitchum had spent years making me believe I needed him. Today, I proved I never did. And the best part was that now, he knew it too. I wasn't naive enough to think that everything would be smooth sailing from here. There would be more doubts and more challenges, but this was a sweet, clean end to that chapter of my life. I knew if I ever lost my footing again, Courtney would be there to remind me of this day, to remember who I'd become, and that I had everything I needed to keep moving forward. I had nothing more to prove to show I was worthy of success in this industry. Her voice bubbled with laughter as she shot me a look full of pride and amusement before calling out, "Hey kids, come in here. Daddy has a story to share about a dragon he slayed at work today." I mouthed the words, "I love you," as I watched the footsteps turn into shadows racing down the stairs. Ollie shouted, "Tell us about the dragon." Emily's voice followed a few steps behind. "Did you rescue a princess?" We all settled into the couch and I began my story. The perfect way to end the day. End of chapter.